Resident Evil has a lot of characters, and Capcom just loves sending characters to the character graveyard, and there are a lot of characters there who deserve a return. And this is just my list of characters who needs to come back, from it would be cool if they came back to okay, they really need to come back. The first character I want to start this list off with is Jessica Sherwood. For those who don't know, Jessica is one of the antagonists in Resident Evil Revelations. She was a Tricell agent who infiltrated the BSAA as a spy for the FBC. Her mission with Tricell was to retrieve the T-Abyss virus. For me, Jessica was one of the more interesting antagonists in Resident Evil Revelations, and there is just so much that you can like about her, from her design to her design, and to have her come in a later game would be really cool. She's the only character on this list I think it would be cool if she came back. Every character from this point forward I think needs to come back. That being said, the next character is Rebecca Chambers. She was a member of STAR's Bravo team. She made her first appearance in Resident Evil 1 and was the protagonist of Resident Evil 0. But Rebecca isn't that dead of a character, said no one. Game-wise, Rebecca is pretty dead. The last canon game she appeared in was Resident Evil 0, and that was almost 23 years ago. At first, I felt Rebecca shouldn't come back, cause it would have meant that not all surviving STAR's members are fighting against bioterrorists. But after seeing her in the movies, I just had one question. Why aren't they putting her in games? Rebecca is actually a really good character, and just to have her only appear in movies kinda sucks since the movies aren't that good. If Rebecca makes her canon appearance in game again, it will be a huge surprise. Even if it's just a spin-off game that takes place in 2010 at a university, it would still be great to see Rebecca come back. The next character is Jake Mueller. Jake made his first appearance in Resident Evil 6 and he was one of the protagonists in that game. Jake is the son of Albert Wesker, and if you ask me, he has a lot of potential to be one of the best characters in Resident Evil. Being Albert Wesker's son, Jake has some genetic abilities like being really fast and really strong. His story in Resident Evil 6 learning to accept his role in stopping the C virus wasn't the greatest story, but it was a way for us to get to know the character. However, Jake's story is extremely unfinished and extremely lacking, even though there is so much going on with him. And no, I'm not just talking about the fact that he's Albert Wesker's son. Jake was a mercenary and he worked with the Adonian Liberation Army, the people responsible for spreading the C virus throughout Adonia. Unfortunately, in Resident Evil 6, a lot of this stuff is not really important to the story. Him being Albert Wesker's son is only important because this is the reason why he's immune to the C virus. So if Jake was to come back, I would want it to be a spin-off all about him learning more about his father and about his past as a merc. But Resident Evil 6 wasn't that successful of a game, and this is probably one of the reasons we will never see Jake again. The next character on this list is Hunk, the former captain of Umbrella USS Alpha Team. Hunk is known by many names: the Grim Reaper, the God of Death, Mr. Death. But his real name is a mystery. Hunk made his first appearance in Resident Evil 2 Fourth Survivor, and that was his only canon appearance. Unlike some of the characters in this video, Hunk does make an appearance here and there, but his last canon appearance was in RE2, and there are a lot of questions fans have about Hunk. Some don't really need to be answered, but others I feel need to have an answer. And one of those questions that I feel needs to have an answer is what happened to Hunk after Umbrella collapsed. On my video about the possible antagonist for Resident Evil 9, someone commented, "It's Hunk." I personally think it would be really cool if Hunk appears in Resident Evil 9 as one of the antagonists. And let's just say by some miracle this does happen, Capcom would have to be extremely careful because a lot of Hunk's charm come from the fact that he is a mystery. And I feel if they do bring him back in a later game, they would have to keep a lot of that mystery. The next character I want to mention is Manuela Hidalgo. Now I know I have a couple people asking, who the hell is Manuela Hidalgo? After this, you will know who she is and you will want her to come back. Okay, Manuela is the daughter of Javier Hidalgo. He was a drug lord and he was also one of Albert Wesker's customers. When her mother contracted a terminal illness, Javier purchased the T. Veronica virus from Wesker in hopes of saving her. But it ended up failing. Manuela ended up contracting the same virus as her mother, and Javier believed the only way he can save his daughter is by infecting her with the T. Veronica virus. It may have failed with his wife, but it will work with her, and god damn it, it did. But at a risk. The virus was spreading just a bit too fast and he had to kind of slow it down a bit. So he kidnapped some teenage girls and gave their organs to his daughter. Not like she knew this was happening to her body though. In 2002, she found out what was happening with her body and she was extremely disgusted with herself and her father, so she escaped her father's mansion. Around the same time, former rookie cop Leon Kennedy and what's that dude name? Krauser were investigating her father. They ended up finding Manuela in a church singing to her mutated mother. Her father is horrible at trying to get rid of things. And you know, since Leon and Krauser, it's their job to put down mutations, they put down a mutation. Okay, let's skip through this real quick because this video is not about to turn into a Manuela video. During the fight against her father, Manuela uses her ability to help Leon and Krauser defeat him. Her infected blood turned into flames. Yeah, she had the burning blood ability Nezuko has before Nezuko had it. After the events of the game, she was taken into US custody for her viral infection, but it was most likely for viral research. Oh yeah, by the way, the game I'm speaking of is the Dark Side Chronicles. And who the fuck played that game? The reason Manuela is a very interesting character is because she was infected with the T. Veronica virus. And let's be honest, Capcom loves to throw away viruses just as much as they love to throw away characters. If Capcom does bring Manuela back in the game and she's the protagonist, it might have to be just a bit more horror focused. Because Manuela is inexperienced, but the game can also be similar to the Rose DLC in Resident Evil 8, with Manuela slowly learning to use her abilities. But I really do doubt Manuela will ever come in another game, and unfortunately, I think she will just become one of those characters that's completely forgotten by the fans and Capcom. Okay, everybody from this point I think really needs to come back. And I'm starting it off with Jill. Jill was a former member of STAR's Alpha team, and she was one of the survivors of the raccoon incident. She made her first appearance in Resident Evil 1, and she was the protagonist in RE3 and RE Revelations, and she made an appearance and a lot of other things. It was real hard for me not to put Jill at the #1 spot, but Jill has been making a comeback. Like, she recently appeared in the Dead Island movie. This is her most recent canon appearance since Resident Evil Revelations. And Jill may appear in Resident Evil 9, but like many Jill fans, I have concerns about Jill returning in a later game. Jill became my favorite character ever since I played Resident Evil Revelations, and throughout that time as I played more Resident Evil games, her title was only threatened by one other character, and is still being threatened by that character. But Jill's most recent canon appearance was extremely similar to Jill in Resident Evil 3 Remake. I actually really liked Jill in Resident Evil 3 Remake, and to me she was one of the best characters in that game. She wasn't like Jill, not at all, but at the same time, she didn't have to be like Jill because it was a remake. She was a reimagined Jill. And to me, she was actually a really fun character. And what a lot of fans have noticed, myself included, if Jill does appear in a later game, she may be extremely similar to the Jill in Resident Evil 3 Remake. But that isn't the Jill I love, and if that does end up happening, put Jill at #1, because at that point the Jill that I wanted to come back and many other Jill fans wanted to come back most likely will never come back. The next character is Alex Wesker. Alex Wesker was one of the Wesker children. The Wesker children were gifted children who were abducted by Spencer and were infected with the progenitor virus. Alex Wesker is the only surviving Wesker child. Alex Wesker was said to be the brightest out of the Wesker children. Alex is also the main antagonist of Resident Evil Revelations. She created the T-Phobos virus, and because her body was dying, she transferred her consciousness into a newer, younger body, and that newer, younger body was adopted by Barry Burton. I'm not saying her name because the moment I say her name, I will want to explain who she is. What can I say about Alex Wesker that everyone else hasn't already said? Alex Wesker is an antagonist that's just waiting to be used, and I just have one question for Capcom when it comes to her.
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?
Capcom has to use Alex Wesker, because if they don't, she will go down in history as one of the most underutilized characters. There is just so much Capcom can do with her. She is the villain just waiting to be used, so just use her. And now we are at the top 2, and at the #2 spot of characters I feel needs to come back to Resident Evil, we have Moira Burton. Moira is the daughter of former STARS member Barry Burton. She was one of the protagonists of RE Revelations 2, and her story in that game is one of the best stories ever told in Resident Evil. I probably got some people asking why I put Moira at the #2 spot. Is she really that special? So recently I finished Resident Evil Revelations 2. And at the beginning, I wasn't paying too much attention to Moira because I was playing the game so I can finish it for my Claire video. Watching her develop in that game became one of the best parts of that game, and that's saying a lot because that's a really good game. And if we're able to see Moira continue to grow in another game, that will be a goddamn treat. And if Capcom puts Moira in another game, I feel Moira will finally get the attention she deserves. Before I get to the number 1 spot, I want to talk about a few honorable mentions. They don't fit the criteria to be on this list, but I do want to see them in another game. The first honorable mention is Claire Redfield, the sister of former Stars member Chris Redfield. She made her first appearance in Resident Evil 2 and became a recurring protagonist ever since. I didn't put Claire on this list because she isn't quite dead. In fact, she's actually really alive. I just have somewhat of a fear when it comes to Claire. It doesn't seem like Capcom is making any real effort to put her back in the games. I feel like Claire will end up getting the Rebecca treatment. You know what that means. That means she will only appear in movies. And like I said with Rebecca, that kinda sucks ass because the movies are trash. I really do hope Capcom proves me wrong and bring her back in the game. The next honorable mention is Albert Wesker, a man who needs no introduction. Wesker could have easily been number 1 on this list if he wasn't actually in the graveyard. But I did decide to put him in an honorable mention because I don't think Wesker's death in Resident Evil 5 was a satisfying ending to Albert Wesker. If Capcom manages to bring back Wesker in a way that makes some kind of sense, shit, I'm all for it. Enough of the honorable mentions, let's get to the person that I think needs to be revived more than anyone else. This was actually a really tough choice, but if you have been watching my videos, you probably already guessed who is at the number 1 spot. And yeah, you're right, it's Sherry Birkin. Sherry Birkin, the daughter of Umbrella researchers William and Annette Birkin. She made her first appearance in Resident Evil 2 and reappeared in Resident Evil 6 as a DSO agent. Sherry is here because she has the most story potential out of any character in Resident Evil, only being beaten by probably Alex Wesker. There are only like 3 other characters that comes close to her, and those characters are Jake, Ada, and Manuela. Every other character don't even come that close to Sherry when it comes to potential. Sherry is the only person who was infected with the G virus and survived, and let's be honest, the G virus is the most deadliest virus when it comes to mutations. Sherry has one of the most unique backgrounds. And even though I think Sherry was completely wasted in Resident Evil 6, they did give her even more potential to have one of the most amazing stories ever told in Resident Evil. Having Sherry work for the people that stole her life for their own selfish gain added so much more to her character. But the writers of Resident Evil 6 do absolutely nothing with this, and this is the other reason why I want Sherry to come back. Because even though she appeared in Resident Evil 6, which came out almost 13 years ago, her character is underutilized in that game. So please, Capcom, bring Sherry back and give her the story we all know Sherry could have. Well, these are some of the characters that I want to come back. And if somebody's asking, where's Ashley? You think I want this in the game again?
Help me, Leon! Help! Leon! Leon!
Sandy Cheek's voice actress does an amazing job. Yes, the squirrel, but no. By the way, I still don't have Resident Evil 4 Remix, so I do not know how she is in that game. I just realized something. I'm literally at the end of the video and I forget Sheva. This is probably why I shouldn't do lists. Just throw Sheva in between Hunk and Jake, because I do want Sheva to come back. Anyway, if you had Monster Reborn, who would you want Capcom to bring back from the character graveyard? Tell me in the comments, I'm curious to know. Anyway, if you liked this video, you can give it a like. If you didn't, thank you for the watch time. You can also click on the video that's being suggested to you right now. It's also about forgotten characters in Resident Evil, but these characters is forgotten in another way. Anyway, you still here?